If someone had told me a simple wedding invite would change my life, I would have just rolled my eyes and bought a dress. The inn rested where the coastal road bent like a ribbon. Its cedar shingles had weathered to the same dull gray as the overcast sky. Tessa Calder climbed out of the rideshare with a garment bag and a carry-on, drawing in the scent of salt and damp wood. She liked cities that followed plans. Seaside towns ignored blueprints. Inside, the floorboards murmured beneath barn beams laced with fairy lights. A chalkboard read, "Welcome Kara and Rafa. Rehearsal dinner at 7. Tessa insisted to herself that the message was meant for everyone. She straightened her blazer and moved toward the front desk with the same concentration she reserved for sidewalks. Checking in, the clerk asked, "Calder, Tessa. Bridal block." A lighthouse stamped keycard sleeve slid forward. Room 214, Harbor Wing, Seaview. Tessa turned and bumped a rolling suitcase. The apology died. It wasn't the luggage. It was the scent. Rain on cotton and a voice pitched low with surprise. Lila Marino stood with a camera backpack, light brown hair wavy from travel, green eyes as startling as a field after a tunnel. 5 years lived in the angles of her face and in the distance she carried. "Hi," Tessa said, producing the safest word in English. She had rehearsed better sentences. None arrived on time. The clerk, cheerful, chirped, "Ms. Marino, you're in 218 Harbor Wing. Also the same elevator." Of course, Lila's mouth found a tentative smile. "Guess fate booked this place." "I don't let fate do my seating charts," Tessa said evenly. They reached for the elevator button at once, withdrew, then agreed silently that Lila should press it. In the mirrored doors, Tessa saw herself, 35, dark hair straight and pinned, posture neat, eyes calm. Beside her, Lila was motion. 33, hair soft and unruly, green gaze. The elevator hummed. "You look well," Lila said. "How was the trip?" "Uneventful." "You, New York, Providence." Train finished in the dark room at 2. The doors opened onto a hallway of sconces and a runner that hushed steps. Small vases of pies punctuated the distance. Tessa pointed left. 214. "See you around." "I don't want it to be weird," Lila said, gentle but direct. "It's a wedding," Tessa answered. "Weird is the dress code." Favorite people, Kara burst from a side corridor and a confetti of to-do lists. She squeezed them both, clocked their numbers, suppressed a grin. Perfect. Neighbors, I need 2 favors. Printer died. Table cards must be reprinted in town. Also, Rafa is making existential choices about the playlist, and none of them should be legal. "I can drive," Lila said quickly. "Bless you," Kara replied. "Copy shop closes at 5. Rehearsal dinner at 7. Don't be beautiful. Be on time." In 214, Tessa hung her blazer, sat on the bed, and laced her fingers to steal the tremor she reserved for board presentations. 5 years ago, the last air she shared with Lila had smelled like rain and airport cleaner. A promised voicemail had never arrived. To keep living, Tessa had written a clean narrative. Some people choose distance. You honor that by matching it. A knock. Lila stood with a folded map and the watchful look of someone asking permission to exist nearby. "Ready?" Lila asked. "Copy shop? Ready?" Tessa said, adding because competence was armor. "I made a list of fonts in case we need to substitute." Lila smiled. "For real?" "Of course you did." They walked the hallway at a pace that pretended casual. In the lobby, Reva waved from behind a fort of gift bags. Outside the town was 5 minutes of shingles and flags. At the copy counter, a teenager called the dead printer a crime and promised the order in an hour. Time they hadn't requested. "Coffee?" Lila gestured toward a cafe planted with ferns. The cafe's white tile threw back light. The chalkboard menu listed drinks named with confidence. "How's work?" she asked, hands around a mug. "Still the same firm?" "I made partner last year," Tessa said. "Adaptive reused public spaces." "I like buildings that remember what they were." "That's exactly you," Lila said, coloring at the familiarity. "Congratulations." What about you? Assignments in Purdue and Hamburg. A small show if I turn in Prince. I told myself I wanted to see things from far away. She blew on her coffee. Sometimes far away is just a crafty synonym for afraid. Tessa let the word sit. A gull shouted from the roof. The espresso machine hissed and settled. Kara loves your eye, she said at last. And she trusts your lists, Lila replied, grinning. The old rhythm hovered. They didn't accept its dare, but neither refused it. They collected the table cards and carried the box together, fingers almost touching over cardboard. In the car, they softened the playlist debate into a plan. Rafa could have one sentimental ballad. Everything else would serve the dance floor. It was relief to talk about songs that belonged to everyone. Back at the inn, fairy lights bloomed against a darkening sky. In the elevator, Lila's shoulder almost grazed Tessa's. Both noticed and pretended not to. At their doors, they paused like actors hitting marks. Thank you, Lila said, for coming for this. We were assigned, Tessa said lightly, then softened, you're welcome. 7. I'll walk down at 6:55, Tessa said, acutely aware of how many times a door in their past had closed a minute too early. She showered, chose a dress she called Benel Elegance, pinned her hair, fastening a thin gold circle at her throat. She remembered a lake summer, counting freckles, thunder, lightning, and tucked the memory away like a fragile photograph. At 6:55, she opened her door as Lila opened hers. Their soft laugh felt like a cue finally hit. They moved down the hallway in step, neither leading, the runner absorbing the tentative drum of renewed possibility. The elevator doors slid open like a scene change. Downstairs, silverware clinketed, voices braided, and music tested speakers softly. The rehearsal dinner would be clatter and toasts and stories told out of order. Tessa didn't know if what began there would be friendship or apology or the first brick of something rebuilt. She only knew that walking toward it with Lila felt less like surrender and more like choosing the right street in a town that refused every map but the hearts. By the time they reached the dining room, the inn had become a soft chorus of glass and laughter. Lanterns glowed over long tables dressed in shell-cold linen. Place cards fresh from the coffee shop stood beside sprigs of rosemary. A chalkboard asked guests to share a weather memory. Look at these, Kara said, swooping in to correct a fork already straight. Perfect. Rafa's playlist is 90% survivable. She kissed Tessa's cheek, then Lila's. You two are at table 4, my cousin who tells stand-up jokes at funerals, and Miles, Rafa's best friend who gets emotionally attached to appetizers. Protect yourselves. Lila laughed. Well, be brave. They found table 4 and the place cards decided the first move. Tessa on the aisle, Lila beside her. Across sat Zia in a green jumpsuit and Miles, whose cufflinks were tiny vinyl records. Finally, Zia said, the famous X's, legendary. Hi, Tessa replied. Tessa, Lila added. To legends, Miles said, lifting his water, and to weather stories. The first course arrived. Conversation moved like an easy tide. How Kara and Rafa met during a power outage. How a hurricane almost canceled their second date, but trapped them in a diner with pie. It was almost ordinary until Lila laughed and the past tugged when a platter of grilled artichokes landed. Zia said, true or false? Relationships live on the leaves and die on the hearts. False, Lila said, amused. The heart is the best part. Spoken like someone who knows where to cut, Miles replied. Lila picked up the platter to pass it. The table shrank to the choreography of hands. Tessa reached to study the tongs at the same moment Lila's fingers closed on them. Skin met, flinched, then stayed a second longer than manners required. A quiet astonishment moved through both of them. Tessa saw a flash, rain on a windshield, an airport drop-off, a voicemail box that did not hold what she begged it to hold. Tessa withdrew first, schooling her face. Lila continued the pass with a soft, sorry that meant many things. Who's the DJ whisperer? Dia asked. Because Rafa will slow dance to a washing machine if we let him. Tessa, as Lila said before Tessa could demur. She once saved a party with a playlist that made accountants dance. Miles pointed at Tessa. Then you get executive authority over the one slow ballad. Choose wisely. Not a power to use lightly. Tessa said inside. She felt the old glide of Lila talking about her as if still in the same paragraph. The toast began. Kara's father told a camping in the rain story. Rafa's sister made everyone cry with a brief line about home being the person who watches the forecast with you. Lila's eyes shone. Tessa looked away before she was pulled into the shimmer. A man in a linen blazer stopped at their table. Lila Marino as I live and breathe. He was a photographer too. A colleague from a Porto assignment. You're impossible to schedule and always worth it. Lila stood to hug him. Adrian, what are you doing here? My wife's cousin is mirroring into this chaos, Adrian said. He glanced at the camera by Lila's chair. Still faithful to that model. Upgraded the sensor. Same bones. You always did keep the bones, he said. I'm in town through Monday. Let me buy you a drink tomorrow. Tessa folded her napkin edge into a straight line. Leila hesitated. I'm booked with wedding things, she said, then gentled it. But maybe a coffee? Coffee it is. Adrian touched her shoulder and moved on. Zia raised both brows. International colleagues. Fancy tiny world. Lila said lightly, but she kept her gaze on her plate a beat too long. Between courses, Kara stopped at table 4, plucked a bread roll from Miles's plate, and whispered, hydrate. She squeezed Tessa's shoulder, squeezed Lila's. When dessert arrived. A lemon cake with frosting like careful weather, the band tested a song. The first notes were a love ballad too earnest for air. Miles groaned. No, he said, we cannot do this to ankles and morale. I'll talk to the DJ. Tessa volunteered, rising. Layla rose too without thinking. They walked to the corner where a man with headphones hunched over dials. Tessa explained the ratio of nostalgia to rhythm, and the man nodded, grateful. The next track queued up, later, A Promise of Hips. On their walk back, a cousin caught Lila's arm and asked about cameras for beginners. A stranger told Tessa her dress was architectural in the best way. When Tessa reclaimed her seat, Adrian was there again, leaning on the back of Lila's chair, talking composition. He was not unkind. He was also not invisible. Something old rose in Tessa and she pushed it down. Not jealousy exactly, more the ache of being unconsulted by history. Layla finally sat, cheeks warmer than the room. He's kind, she said, almost apologizing. He seems it, Tessa answered. She cut into the cake and discovered it was perfect. The room thinned after coffee. Hugs multiplied. Plans for morning multiplied too. Tessa helped Kara collect stray menus. Lila rallied a search party for a missing clutch that turned up in a potted fern. It was easy to be useful together. It was also exhausting. At the archway, Zia kissed both of them on the cheek. You two are like barometers, she said. When you're in the same room, the pressure drops and it rains feelings. Miles raised a solemn fist. Tomorrow we dance. They stepped into the hallway at the same time without arranging it. The music softened. The runner met their shoes. I'm glad you came, Lila said, voice steady but small. Kara would have murdered me if I didn't, Tessa said. Then softer. I'm glad you're here too. They stood a moment inside a mutually agreed pause. A couple swayed under the exit sign, practicing a slow dance. Lila looked as if she might speak a sentence with truth in it. Good night, Tessa, she said instead. Good night, Layla. They turned in opposite directions, footsteps fanning out like two paths on a map that still refused to show all the roads. Questions followed each of them up the stairs, persistent as the sea. For now, morning wore a low fog over the inn and dunes, and the parking lot yawned. The hallway runner hushed every step. Tessa noticed the quiet because her thoughts wouldn't match it. Memory behaved like a door someone kept opening and closing to check if she was there. At 7:12 a.m., Kara's text landed. SOS, Florist shorted greenery for binders plus ribbon wrong color. Can someone pick up the vow booklets from Tideway Stationers? Hero gets first slice of cake. Tessa typed, "We can handle it," and stepped into the hall. Lala emerged at the same moment, hoodie zipped to her throat, hair gathered like a small storm. She held up her phone. "Same panic?" "Same," Tessa said. "Let's go." Kara appeared with a lemon yellow ribbon, appalled. "Keys at the desk." "Stationers opens at 8. Please also talk Rafa down from a sax solo." "We'll try to save civilization," Tessa said. They grabbed coffee from the lobby urn and crossed the gravel to Kara's hatchback. Leela drove. Tessa unfolded a paper map, even though her phone pulsed directions. Holding the map steadied her. "Stationers first?" Lila asked. "Vows outrank ribbon," Tessa said in her project voice. "Start with structure," Lila smiled sideways. "Architect to the bone." Tideway Stationers smelled like paper and pencil shavings. A woman with a pencil tucked behind her ear produced craft booklets tied with twine. Kara and Rafa pressed in clean type. "Tell Kara the embossing turned out understated and therefore correct," she said. "It's perfect," Lila murmured, thumb grazing the names as if learning them by touch. They stowed the stack like something fragile and detoured through the pop-up farmer's market. Buckets of greens, olive branches, waxy chamolia leaves. Tessa reached for myrtle just as Lila did. Their fingers met the same leaf and paused. "Last night's serving tongs in miniature." Both laughed, a little breathless. "You take it," Lila said. "Shared custody of foliage?" Tessa replied. "Very modern." At a fabric shop, they chose a deep forest ribbon, not sunshine. Lila talked not strength and how ribbon fell in photographs. Tessa measured twice and cut once, earning the clerk's grin. Back in the car, they divided tasks without announcing it. Leela phoned the florist about wire and pins. Tessa repacked the trunk so nothing would crush the vow booklets. The radio found an old indie track they used to drive to at a summer lake town where the only station alternated nostalgia with weather advisories. The drum part lived behind Tessa's teeth. Lila's fingers drummed the wheel exactly as they used to. 2 taps, then 3. "I'd forgotten this," Lila said quiet. "You didn't," Tessa answered. "You packed it. It came with you." The edge in her voice surprised her. Some things go quiet until the radio remembers. Lila's mouth tilted. "I miss driving with you." Left at the light, Tessa said, because logistics were the nearest guardrail. The florist, harried but kind, set them at a back table with wire and shears. They made miniature arrangements like it was a test of how 2 people coordinate breath. Lila's hands were quick, a little messy, beautiful. Tessa's were precise. Sprigs of eucalyptus and myrtle, a freckle of baby's breath, boughs tied in attentive loops. When a pin pricked Lila's finger, Tessa captured her hand without thinking and pressed the tiny wound until it stopped singing. "Thanks," Lila whispered. "Occupational hazard," Tessa said, releasing her when sense returned. They delivered the extras to Kara, who was elbow-deep in seating charts. "You competent angels," she said 2 hours before the pre-party. "And if Rafa mentions saxophone, tell him his ambusher is the problem." Upstairs, the quiet felt earned. They slowed at the same pace. "Thank you for today," Lila said. "You're easy to be useful with." Useful is underrated. Tessa said it fixes more than people think. Lila drew breath, a sentence forming. "There's something I should have." Bridesmaid rounded the corner, arms full of crisis, a zipper mutiny, a plea for safety pins. Lila was swept away. Tessa waited a beat, then let the moment go to ground like a kite losing wind. In her room, Tessa sat with the vow booklets, someone else's promises. Steady, hopeful, she opened one, read the blank lines Kara and Rafa would soon fill, and felt admiration breeded with envy. She loved structure. She hadn't always trusted vows. Maybe vows were just blueprints. Not the house, but the plan you return to when storms inevitably arrive. A knock produced fresh towels. Another down the hall. Leela's door. Friends calling her to hair and makeup. The inn hummed with gentle purpose. Outside the fog loosened. The sky considered blue. By late afternoon, rehearsal would become an unofficial party. Dancing, laughter, maybe the mercy of rhythm replacing thought. Tessa stood, smoothed the dress she'd laid across a chair, and told herself, tonight is for being present, not for building narratives that excuse you from risk. In the mirror, she fastened a thin gold circle and tucked a stray hair. Through the wall came Lila's muffled laugh, then quiet. Tessa touched the door frame with 2 fingers, the way a swimmer touches the pool edge before pushing off. At 6:55, she opened her door. Lila's opened too, as if the inn had agreed on timing. They smiled first at coincidence, then at relief. Ready? Lila asked. As I'll ever be, Tessa said. They walked side by side toward the stairs, the air carrying a mineral scent. Not rain yet. The hush of the runner made their steps feel like a secret. The lobby glow rose to meet them. Glass clink, low music, the social weather of people learning to be in the same room. Near the landing, Lila slowed. Tessa. She stopped, measuring courage. Later, can we talk? I mean, really talk. I owe you at least part of it. Tessa's chest tightened. Not with panic, but with room for something. Yes, she said. Later, they rounded the last turn and the music opened like a door. Kara spotted them, lifted 2 fingers in a salute, and pointed toward the makeshift dance floor where a DJ tested a beat promising hips, not saxophones. Side by side, they stepped into the evening, useful together, and for the first time all day, a little brave. The DJ kept the room moving, a clean beat and a little brass, nothing that trapped ankles. Lanterns swayed above the crowd. The long tables had surrendered to a dance floor. Tessa let Zia and Miles drag her into a line dance. Lila orbited the group at first with her camera, then left it at the DJ table and stepped into the circle beside Tessa. They fell into rhythm the way people do after sharing, kitchens reading the turns, adjusting for each other without colliding. Later, Lila mouthed later, on a spin. Tessa dipped her head in answer. The agreement stretched between them like a thin, steady line. When Kara snatched the mic for practice toasts, Tessa and Lila shifted into being useful stacking plates, folding sweaters, working a stubborn necklace clasp free. By 10, the crowd had drifted toward the porches and the bar. Somewhere out past the dark windows, a foghorn groaned. Lila met Tessa's gaze and angled her head toward the lobby. They slipped out together, the music sealing off behind them. The hallway was nearly still, a single lamp throwing a small pool of light across the runner. The harbor mural on the wall looked as if night had seeped into its paint. Here, okay? Lila asked. Here, Tessa said. I know how to come back from a hallway. Lila leaned lightly against the wainscoting. I told you I owed you my part of it. I've carried a dozen versions around and hated every one. I'm not putting you on the stand, Tessa said. Just talk to me. Lila twisted her fingers together, then apart. Porto offered a residency. The visa countdown started the day the email landed. 72 hours to say yes. That same week my dad had a health scare. He's fine now, but it shook me. You had that downtown project you'd spent the whole year fighting for. I kept telling myself I couldn't be the person who asked you to blow it all up. She let out a breath. So I made a snap decision and pretended it was measured. You could have asked me to think it through with you, Tessa said, keeping her tone steady. I know, Lila replied softly. I was scared you'd say yes. And if you ended up regretting it, I wouldn't know how to forgive either of us, so you decided for both of us. I decided for me, Lila said, flinching, and dressed it up as something noble. It was cowardice pretending to be care. They let the words settle. Somewhere down the corridor, an elevator hummed, then went quiet. Tessa studied a hairline crack in the plaster, the kind you accept and paint around. It didn't help. I loved you, Tessa said and corrected the tense. I loved you. I had a right to be in the room when the choice was made. You did Lila said. I didn't let you. The simple math of it stung worse than an elaborate excuse. Tessa had wanted an event large enough to justify the break, something external and unarguable. Instead, she got the human scale, fear, timing, speed, a story told to make it bearable. I waited for your message, Tessa said. Then I stopped because I had to. Work moves forward. I like finished edges. Lila's mouth pulled into a rofl line. That sounds like you. It was survival? Lila nodded, eyes bright, but holding. I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight. I just can't stand you thinking I left because you weren't enough. You're exactly what I wanted. That's what scared me. A memory walked in and sat down. A birthday at the lake house. A cake that leaned like a tired boat. Glow-in-the-dark stars Layla had stuck to the ceiling. Thunder mumbling beyond the hills. They danced barefoot on old boards to a song that never made radio. Lila had kissed frosting from Tessa's finger, laughing. For a minute, Tessa had believed rooms could stay exactly as they were. The present came back like a door closing gently. Lila waited, not pushing. Thank you for telling me, Tessa said. It doesn't make it neat, but I'd rather have plain truth than clever story. There's more small pieces I didn't handle well, Lila said. But that's the spine. The spine is what holds weight, Tessa said. I know. A burst of laughter drifted from the dining room and frayed out. The hallway clock ticked too loudly for real life. I'm tired, Tessa said, soft but clipped. Tomorrow is big for Kara. We should be steady. Of course, Layla swallowed. Tessa, I'm sorry. Not the cinematic kind. The ordinary kind. Tessa nodded once. Anything gentler might crack something open she couldn't close before morning. They walked toward their rooms in parallel, close enough to feel the other's gravity, not close enough to touch. Outside a window, the sky had thinned to a pearl smear and one star. The inside around them like an animal settling. At their doors, they paused the exact distance of caution. Good night, Lila said, apology shaped into courtesy. Good night, Tessa said, inches from kind. Inside 214, Tessa sat on the bed and unhooked the slim gold circle at her throat. The room smelled faintly of salt and pies. She lay back and watched the crack in the ceiling resolve into a harmless line. Her phone lit with a push alert. Coastal system moving in by morning, gusts likely by afternoon. She turned the screen face down. Through the wall came a muffled thud and the brief rush of water. She pictured Lila sitting on her own bed, heel of her hand braced against her brow. It was not comforting and not cruel. It was just two people in adjacent rooms, finally speaking into the same air after years of building their own versions of the past. Tessa turned off the lamp. Darkness gathered without menace. Beyond the window, the sea worked at the shore with patient conviction. The thought steadied her. Water does what it does until rock changes. She breathed with it, slow in, slow out, and decided that for tonight, neutrality was a kind of discipline. In the morning, there would be lists and errands and vows that belonged to other people. There would also be weather. She let the quiet take her, not as an answer, but as a blank page that didn't rush her hand. Out at sea, heat lightning stitched the horizon, the kind of warning locals respected. Tessa slept, not deeply, but to meet morning without breaking. Morning arrived bright on the glass, but the alert on Tessa's phone contradicted the light. Coastal low strengthening, rain by afternoon, gust. 35 to 45. The building creaked through the wall. Lila's alarm chimed, then stopped. 2 rooms, 2 wake-ups, 1 forecast. By 8, the lobby was triged already. Kara paced with a clipboard. Plan B is the ballroom, she said. Arbor inside, aisle narrower, candles away from fabric. Also, can one of you set the weather memory station? The postcard suitcase goes by the guest book. We've got it, Tessa said. Lila lifted a leather suitcase from a trolley. Old buckles clicking like small thunder. This was mine, she said. Kara borrowed it when I left for Porto. She unbuckled it. The lid opened to cedar and travel. Inside lay blank postcards, lighthouses, dunes, storm maps, an elastic lazy around them and a tin of pens. They arranged the suitcase beside a carved table. Tessa straightened the chalkboard and drew a quick umbrella. Outside, staff taped down cables. The wind made the tent ropes talk. Coastal charts on top, Tessa asked. Good idea, Lila said, sliding the stack into order. Her thumb snagged a card that wasn't like the rest. No lighthouse, just a skyline at dusk. It was already addressed, the ink slightly blurred to Tessa Calder. Their old street apt 3B Providence, May. A stamp sat unused. A yellow sticker tilted across the back. Yibble to forward return to sender. In the message space, Lila's handwriting ran sure and small. Tessa, I got the residency. It starts fast and I'm panicking about what's fair. I'm not choosing away from you. I'm choosing towards something I've wanted since childhood, and I'm terrified that asking you to come will feel like theft. I'll be at the pier Friday at 7 to talk. If you still want to talk, please come. I love you. Lila's breath thinned. She hadn't seen this since the week she mailed it. The postmark that never happened was a ghost. What is it? Tessa asked, reading the shift in Lila's shoulders before the object itself. Lila handed it over. I wrote to you. It never got there. Tessa took the card carefully as if it might bruise. She read once, then again, face not changing except for a tiny falter at please come. She flipped it, registered the sticker, the address that wasn't theirs for long. We moved to the new place that Wednesday, she said quietly. Mail forwarding took a week. I checked for something every day. I mailed it Tuesday before my flight. Lila said paper felt more serious than a call. Then I called after security. Your voicemail was full. Tessa closed her eyes. The work of 5 years building a clean narrative she could bear shifted on its foundation. I would have come to the pier, she said. I was there until 8. I thought you decided not to show. I was there, Lila said, till 7:30. Then I told myself the answer was no. She laughed once without humor. We were punctual and wrong. August leaned against the glass. The lobby leaves rattled like rain. The moment remained theirs, but it had to fit inside a machine set to wedding. Tessa slid the card back under the elastic. This doesn't absolve the way you left, she said. Not cruel, just precise. But it changes the math. I know, Lila said. I should have made sure you heard me. I should have knocked on your door before the airport. I kept choosing speed over courage. And I kept choosing composure over curiosity. Tessa said it made me look right even when I was lonely. She cocked the suitcase lid to invite touch. These are supposed to make people tell the truth about weather, she added. Storms come even when morning pretends blue. Lila looked toward the windows. The sky hadn't decided yet. Brightness with a darker seam. She tucked the returned card into the side pocket and closed the clasp gently. We can talk more after the rehearsal, she said. When you have time to be angry in one sitting, I don't know the shape of the anger. Tessa said keep switching names. They worked the rest of the hour into utility. Tessa remeasured the ballroom aisle and marked rows. Lila tested light and negotiated with the DJ about backup power. By noon, the wind had a taste, sharp. Guests texted umbrella emojis. The chalkboard umbrella got company. Tessa added inclement grace. Lila stood a moment under the portico and let the first fine drops find her face. She had a superstition that rained before vows rinsed the edges of the day. She turned back inside and went to find Tessa. She found her in the empty ballroom, checking sightlines. The room was a rehearsal of intimacy. Chairs close, flowers low, a path just wide enough to walk without bumping. The rain made a sound like someone far away applauding. I kept the card, Lila said. I didn't hide it because I feared your reaction. I hid it because I'm ashamed of my own. Tessa held her gaze. My reaction is truly complicated. That's not a warning. It's a fact. I can take complicated. Lila said, I can't take silence. Then don't. Tessa said, tonight we'll talk. She looked at the arbor, then at Lila. If the power goes, the DJ has a battery amp. You are the guardian of Plan B, Lila said. And you are the patron saint of hard light, Tessa said, almost smiling. Another gust shouldered the windows. The room dimmed as the sky thickened. A staffer poked his head in. We're moving the portrait session up an hour. Good call, Lila said. She lifted her camera, held it like a promise. See you on the other side of Poe's smiles. Yes, Tessa said. On the other side, they parted into their duties. The cards stitched into the day like a label no one else would see. Outside, the first true band of rain crossed the lot, erasing tire tracks, making the asphalt into one surface. Inside, lights warmed, flowers breathed, and two women moved furniture and expectations by inches, preparing without saying it yet for a storm that had been on the horizon for years. Rain arrived before the hour turned, hard enough to hush porch talk and crowd the ballroom. Staff dimmed the chandeliers. Wind combed the curtains. The portrait session dissolved. The photographers released the party to rest before the ceremony. In the idling that followed, Tessa checked chair spacing one last time and felt the postcard like a weight in her pocket. Lila slipped into the side salon with her camera to wipe the lens and breathe. The room held velvet chairs, an upright piano with two chip teas, and a window that made rain look vintage. Tessa, seeking quiet, stepped in from the opposite door and stopped. For a heartbeat, they were a reflection. Two women who had rehearsed usefulness until it looked like calm. I did not mean to ambush you, Tessa said. I was hiding from the playlist. Lila gave a breath that could have been a laugh. Then we are both fugitives. She set the camera on the piano lid and turned. We said tonight. It is technically tonight. Say it plain. Tessa answered. No metaphors, no noble synonyms. Lila nodded, cheeks flushed. I left fast, because I was afraid I would ask you to come and you would. I mailed a postcard and I called and I told myself that if you did not meet me at the pier by 7, the story was decided for us. When you were not there at 7:30, I chose to believe we wanted different lives. It was fear and I hate how well it fit. And after Tessa asked, I learned to talk in captions. Lila said, to stand in other people's light and tell their stories with empathy I could not apply to my own. I said distance was depth. It kept me moving. It also kept me from you. Rain thickened into a wall of coin-colored sound. I waited at that pier until 8, Tessa said. Then I went home and packed my anger into drawers like folded shirts. I made partner. I supervised a plaza that makes toddlers run in circles. I dated people who admired the plaza. I tried to prefer being admired to being understood. Did it work? Lila asked. It worked for mornings. Tessa said. Nights were harder. She touched the pocket where the postcard pressed. Finding your message does not erase the bruise, but it changes where I place the ice. Lila stepped closer. Careful, I know you do not owe me generosity. I want accuracy. I was not choosing away from you because you were small. I was choosing towards something I had wanted since childhood, and I lacked the courage to stay in the room while we measured it together. Tessa's mouth crooked. You always saw in lines and angles. Measure, I can respect that. The lamp on the piano flickered, then steadied. But I deserved your messy. The way I loved you could have survived it. I believe that, and it scared me more. Lila said, Tessa, I am sorry not to make you absolve me, to make the record right. Tessa looked at the piano keys, at the chips like small failures. Do you want me to forgive you? I want you to know me, Lila said. If forgiveness lives near that, I will be grateful. If it does not, I will live with it. Silence pulled. Outside, thunder woke over the bay. Down the hall. Kara laughed in 2 syllables Tessa knew. Do you still love me? Tessa asked. Yes, Lila said. She held Tessa's gaze. I tried to store it in safe places. It leaks. I still love you. Tessa said, the problem is not volume. It is management. I can manage, Lila said. I can do schedules, therapy, and the slow work of showing up. I can bring apologies with receipts. I can stand in a room you're in and not make you do all the emotional architecture. Tessa smiled without teeth. You just promised logistics. You know, that is my love language. I know, Lila said softer. I learned to respect languages that are not mine. A staffer's steps clipped past. Voices braided then moved away. The storm swelled and broke, water hammering the terrace. The building took the weather and stayed upright. I'm not ready to decide anything tonight. Kessa said, I cannot pivot from 5 years of story to a new design in an hour. I am not asking for a verdict, Lila replied. I am asking for permission to stand next to you when the rain comes. Tessa studied her, posture steady in the dim. You always looked better in weather. Lila laughed once. I brought it with me apparently. Keep it outside during vows, Tessa said. She stood. We should go back. Kara needs the illusion of control. Lila retrieved her camera. Will you come find me later? Yes, Kessa said after a beat. Later, they walked to the threshold and stopped because stepping out meant becoming useful again. Thunder rolled wider. A flicker teased the corners of the room, then let go. They tilted toward each other and then with discipline away. Thank you for plain speech, Tessa said. Thank you for staying in the room, Lila answered. They exited opposite doors without plan, still in sync, as if the building were designed for their choreography. In the corridor, the noise of the wedding returned. Bustle, instructions, laughter at the edge of worry. Tessa slid the postcard deeper into her pocket like ballast. Lila tightened a loose strap as if her hands needed one competent task. Somewhere a door slammed, then stilled, like the inn, reminding them to breathe. They kept walking anyway. By the time they reached the ballroom, rain had seized the windows and was writing cursive down the glass. The aisle looked narrower. The candles held steady in their hurricanes. Kara spotted them, relief loosening her shoulders, and handed over 2 lists of the captain's authority. Last adjustments, umbrellas to the portico. 5-minute call for family. Tessa and Lila took the lists, nodded once, and parted at the center aisle without speaking. What they did not say, what neither would speak yet, hung like charged air between storm cells. It would find a place. Weather is patient. The vow hour advanced. The 5-minute call went out like a tide bell. Guests gathered by the ballroom doors. Wind smudged the panes. Rain stitched gray lines down the glass. Tessa checked the aisle one last time, hand in her pocket, feeling the postcard like a compass. Lila tightened a mic clip for the efficient and gave the DJ a thumbs up. The battery amp glowed green. Thunder stepped closer. A gust shouldered the side doors, and one sprang open half a palm, letting water crawl in. Staff moved, but too slowly. Tessa reached it first. Lila was already there, pushing the door back into its frame. We need the latch, Tessa said. In the storage alcove, Lila answered outside. They looked at the rain and without dramatics decided. Go, Tessa said, and they slipped through, pulling the door tight behind them to keep the room calm. The portico was a shallow shelter with one side open to the courtyard. Water hammered the brick and coins. The air was bright with that metallic scent that says the storm is working. Lila skidded to the alcove, pulled the latch bar and a roll of gaffer tape from a crate, and handed Tessa the bar. Close work. Tessa fixed the hardware in place while Lila kept it steady. Wind shoved the rain under the overhang, dampening their sleeves. When the latch finally caught, they stopped there, their breathing matching for a heartbeat. Inside, the ballroom lights fluttered, dimmed, then settled, candles holding firm in their glass cylinders. We should get back, Tessa said, but her feet stayed where they were. 2 minutes, Lila answered. They'll start late anyway. She tipped her head toward the courtyard. God, listen. Tessa did. The storm turned gutters and leaves into drums. Her straight, dark hair started to forget the blowout, losing its neatness. Lila's waves grew heavier, clinging, her green eyes made sharper by the gray around them. I have one more unpretty thing, Lila said over the rain. I never stopped wanting to build a life with you. I just stopped believing I get to ask again. And I never stopped wanting to be asked, Tessa replied. I just trained myself not to answer questions no one said out loud. Lila let out a small laugh that hurt on the way out. We're very brave once the door is already shut. Maybe we try it open, Kessa said, nodding toward the portico's single opening where the rain hung like a curtain. Do you want this? Lila asked, careful as if touching something fragile. Not the memory, not the high, the work, the showing up, the days that smell like dish soap and the nights that smell like printer ink. I will actually block a calendar. I will keep appointments. I keep therapy Tuesdays, flights with return dates. I'll show you my drafts before I hand my images to the world. Tessa looked at her and, to her own surprise, felt steadied by how concrete the ask was. Yes, she said, because disclaimers had passed their expiration. I want your ordinary. Lila breathed out like she'd been holding it underwater for years. Then please, she said, her voice loosening into something softer. Choose me? Not because it's raining and we look like a movie. Choose me at breakfast on a Tuesday. I am, Tessa said. This is a Tuesday decision that just happens to be soaked. They moved closer, the storm having requested honesty from everything it touched. Lila's hand rose, then faltered, and Tessa crossed the last inch herself, laying her palm against Lila's jaw, feeling where the rain cooled and skin warmed. Lila's fingers found the gold circle at Tessa's throat and rested there, an anchoring stud of a pull. I'm scared, Lila whispered. Me too, Tessa said. We can be scared and still make a plan. What's the plan? Lila asked. 90 days, Tessa said. A trial that we don't call a trial. You take the guest room at my place for a month while you finish your edit. I rearrange my morning site walks. We set a weekly check-in we are absolutely not allowed to cancel. We tell Kara and Rafa after their vows, so we're not stealing their light. Today we just begin. Stone in a deep bowl. Water swelled at the portico's edge and splashed cold against their ankles. Tessa could taste the salt and the copper of weather, the faint lemon of the cake cooling somewhere inside. She thought of the postcard's unspent stamp and understood that some messages cross years to land when you can finally receive them. Kiss me, Lila said, not as a plea, but as an instruction she could be held to. Tessa did. The first contact was careful confirmation, not conquest. Then, as both leaned, it became the kind of kiss only people who have survived a long weather system can make. Tender, yes, but also practical. Attentive to angles, to breath, to the reality that rain wants every surface. Lila tasted like coffee and rainwater, Tessa like citrus and resolve. They broke just enough to laugh once, foreheads touching. The rain had wet them thoroughly, the polite way of saying soaked. Proof of concept, Lila said, smiling like light through cloud. Prototype passed, Tessa murmured. Between them, something unclenched. Years of practiced composure releasing like a held breath, and the promise felt ordinary, not miraculous, which made it feel truer at last. Inside, a violin tested a phrase. A cheer went up from the ballroom as if someone had announced the power would hold. Time resumed its social tempo. We should go, Tessa said, though her hand did not move from Lila's jaw. We should, Lila echoed. And still they lingered one beat more, memorizing. They stepped back under the portico roof line and shook out their sleeves. Lila wrapped the gaffer tape, practical even now. Tessa checked the latch because she would always be the person who checks the latch. Their smiles were smaller now and steadier. At the door, Lila caught Tessa's hand, squeezed once. Later, we call the airline, she said. And your office. Later, Tessa agreed. After vows, after cake. They re-entered into warmth and light and the hush that precedes a procession. The room smelled like pies and candle wax and anticipation. Kara saw them, took in the rain in their hair and the unarmed set of their shoulders, and winked. A blessing or thanks or both. The music changed. Guests stood. The aisle, narrower than planned, looked exactly wide enough. The ceremony began with the steadiness of people who had rehearsed kindness. Guests rose. Kara walked the narrow aisle on her father's arm. Rafa cried at a respectable volume. The storm pressed palms to the windows as if it wanted in. And then, as vows were spoken, stepped back like a guest who remembered their place. The battery amp hummed. The candles did their quiet work, and the words that matter, keep, try, choose, landed without wobble. Tessa let herself listen, not as an architect cataloging sightlines, but as a person who had just promised herself a different kind of structure. Beside the arbor, Lila shot 2 frames for Kara's album and then lowered the camera, unwilling to live the moment only through glass. Their shoulders never touched. Their attention did. Rings, kiss, a cheer. The officiant pronounced. The violin lifted a bright coda, and the ballroom exhaled into hugs. Kara grabbed both their hands for a squeeze that said all the separate thank yous at once, then was pulled away by a grandmother with a corsage crisis. During the swirl toward cocktail hour, phones remembered the outside world. Tessa's buzzed first. 2 messages, her calendar chimed. Lila's lit next, the screen showing an airline logo and below it curator confirming Monday 10 saw. They stepped aside to the coat alcove, a sliver of calm smelling of wool and rain. Layla glanced at Tessa's screen. Is it something you can push? Client chirruped Monday at 8. Tessa said stakeholders in the room. City liaison on Zoom. I've already moved it twice because of a utilities survey. She felt the old automatic calculations spin up. Who flies in? Who loses daylight? Who gets cranky when drawing shift? If I go, I leave tonight after the cake. Sleep on the plane. Show up as a person shaped like caffeine. If I don't go, I break a promise I made when we won the bid. Leela swallowed. My flight is at 11, she said. I told Saskia, the Hamburg curator, I'd bring the final selects and we'd hang tests on Monday. If I push, I fall off the wall schedule. If I go, I'm back inside a life I kept at a sprint, so I wouldn't have to notice where I wasn't. They stood with the swell of reception noise just around the corner. Rain ticked on the small window above the coat rack, a metronome that did not care what they decided. Plain talk, Tessa said, and Lila nodded. I meant what I said under the portico, Lila answered. Not the romance, the logistics. If I board that plane, I will make beautiful work and then use it as proof that I can organize my way out of feeling. If I don't, I will disappoint a person who took a chance on me and risk losing a slot I wanted for years. Both are true, but only one of those choices matches the plan we just made. Tessa breathed once. Deep, the kind architects take when a building reveals a problem you can't solve with another layer of drywall. Plan says 90 days, present tense, not theoretical. We set that clock by living in the same paragraph. Leela looked down at her phone. I can offer Saskia alternatives, she said, thinking aloud with the care of someone assembling a fragile machine. We can hang on Thursday instead. I'll courier the prints tonight with the framing notes. I'll send a lighting diagram for the gallery tech. I'll be on Zoom for placement and then fly out Wednesday for the opening prep. It's not the same as my hand on the wall, but it's not vanishing either. Tessa pictured Saskia's emails precise, impatient with dithering, appreciative of solutions. You offering deliverables buys respect, she said. Not excuses, actual logistics. Leela nodded, thumb hovering. I can also pay the courier costs myself and eat the fare change. It's the price of choosing in the right direction, and my Monday, Tessa said, flipping to her calendar with her brain already building scaffolds. I can put Naomi in the room. She's earned a lead. I joined for the last 40 minutes via Zoom with a camera at the physical model. We shift the decision items that require my face to Thursday's steering committee, which is in person anyway. I'll prep a memo tonight with trade-offs so they don't think I'm phoning it in because I'm lazy. She heard her own tone and softened it. I can be honest without oversharing. Unforeseen personal commitment. Here's the plan. Here's what I will deliver today to keep you whole. Lila smiled small and grateful. That's the most you sentence I've ever heard. Accuracy is kindness. Tessa said the phrase surprised her by sounding like a vow. They didn't decide so much as enact the decision they had already made outside in the rain. Tessa opened her laptop on a side table meant for Shaw's. Lila sat on a bench under the window, phone in hand already drafting. Tessa's subject line agenda adjustment for Monday. Charit deliverables attached. She typed clean spare sentences. No drama, only architecture. This moves here. That moves there. Here's how we keep stress out of the joints. She attached updated diagrams and a PDF of the meeting map with tasks reassigned in color. Before she hit send, she added one human sentence. I appreciate everyone's flexibility. My goal is to protect the decision quality and the schedule simultaneously. It felt like standing in front of a room and telling the truth, which was its own kind of bricklaying. Lila's email to Saskia took 2 drafts. The first apologized too much. The second replaced apology with responsibility. I can't be at the Monday hang in person. I'm proposing 3 concrete actions to get us to the same or better result. 1. Courier of final prints with framing notes tonight. 2. My annotated lighting map for your tech. 3. A live Zoom on Monday to finalize placement. I'll fly Wednesday for on-site fine-tuning. If this breaks your week beyond repair, I will accept losing the slot. I won't ghost you. She read it over, then underlined the verbs with her eyes. Proposing, courier, annotated fly, and press send before she can negotiate with fear. They sat a breath longer in the little coat room, the small window bright with wet. Phones pinged responses faster than either expected. Naomi wrote back in 3 minutes. Got it. I've wanted the shot. Thanks for trusting me. Call me later with landmines? The city liaison replied with an irritated understood softened by a note appreciated 2 lines down. The client's project manager wrote, as long as decision logs are updated by E8 Monday, we're fine. Saskia, after 9 minutes that felt like the old 20, replied, do not lose your slot. Do not apologize for having the life. Courier is overkill but accepted. Zoom Monday, Tensai CCT. If we hate it, we rehang. See you Wednesday? A second email followed with only a line. Bring the black jacket for the opening. It makes the greens and the series sing. Lila laughed, wet, relieved. She's bossy and correct. Good traits in a curator, Tessa said and let her shoulders drop where she hadn't known they were high. Lila put the phone down and looked at Tessa in a way that felt like daylight. We just canceled and rescheduled our alibis, she said on purpose. We just chose a plan, Tessa corrected gently. On purpose. Lila reached out, then thought better of it in the public alcove and instead let her hand rest on the bench between them. Tonight, I can pack the guest room and move over after we help with cleanup. I'll push my Tuesday shoot to Thursday and send the shot list to the editor. Now, Therapy Tuesday stays Tuesday. Tessa nodded, already slotting logistics into a week. I'll email building management for the extra VP. I'll move my Wednesday site walk to the afternoon so I can be on your Hamburg-proof call, and she smiled without armor. We schedule a Sunday morning that isn't a catch-up but a check-in coffee and real cups. Questions answered before they turn into stories. Deal, Lila said, and we tell Kara and Rafa after the first dance. Quietly, no stealing light. Exactly. Tessa said we do the kind thing at the right time. They closed laptops and stood in the hallway. The reception had grown into itself. Clink of glass. The first tray of oysters. A circle forming for speeches that would be too long and too loved to cut. The storm having made its point settled into steady rain. Polite again. As they stepped out of the alcove, Tessa's phone buzzed once more. A text from her mother. Proud of you, even without knowing why. Whether there. Because apparently love could be barometric. Tessa smiled, tucked the phone away, and decided to answer later with a picture of cake. Ready? Lila asked. And it wasn't what it had been at the elevator days ago. It was the kind of ready that includes tomorrow. Ready? Tessa said. They crossed back into the room shoulder to shoulder, not touching in a way anyone could name, but changed enough that Zia squinted, then grinned as if she could smell the decision. Miles offered them 2 champagne flutes like a man deputizing a lies. The DJ, reading social pressure correctly, cued something that let feet say what mouths couldn't yet. Tessa and Lila lifted their glasses, didn't clink them too loud, but held the eye contact long enough to make the gesture count. The plan ticked quietly between them. A metronome you feel more than hear. After vows, Tessa said. After cake, Lila said. And then they said together and laughed and stepped into the evening's next thing, as if they'd been practicing for it, which in a way they had. The reception unfolded like a map you finally learned to read. The room brightened. The storm seemed to put its hands in its pockets. Servers flowed with trays. The band slid from brisk to buoyant. Tessa and Lila moved through congratulations and photos like steady weather, present, unhurried together without demanding a spotlight. Zia intercepted them, eyes fox. Whatever barometric deal you two struck, keep paying the dues, she said, and hugged them. Miles arrived with 2 miniature crab cakes, as if filing a permit for protein. They found Kara near the cake table. Veil clipped back with something borrowed. "Are you okay?" she asked, scanning their faces the way only a close friend can. "We are," Tessa said. "We have a plan that starts now and respects your spotlight." "Tell me after the first dance," Kara whispered. "I like my gossip timed." Toasts rose like kites. Too many, all loved. Tessa kept a line from Rafa's brother. "Choose each other out loud," as if it were a tool she could pocket beside the postcard. Lila shot 3 frames, then lowered the camera to watch Kara and Rafa's parents laugh with their foreheads together. The band's soft pivoted into a waltz, and Kara's fingers spiraled in the air. The first dance, the crowd formed a ring. Rafa's hand found Kara's waist. Their steps were imperfect and adorable. When the song eased to its last loop, Tessa touched Lila's elbow. Now, Layla said. They approached the newlyweds. Kara's eyes widened. She already knew the shape of the announcement. She only needed the nouns. "We're trying again," Tessa said simply, with logistics and therapy and a calendar that tells the truth. 90 days to begin, not to test, Lila added. "We'll tell the room by behaving like ourselves." Kara hugged them. "My present," she said, mock scolding. Rafa bowed. "May your renovations come in on time and under budget," he told Tessa to Lila. "May your light always fall at 45. The band announced an open floor. A modern bassline persuaded reluctant feet. For the first time in years, Tessa felt like dancing was not an argument with gravity, but a conversation with it. She and Lila stepped into the flood of bodies and let the crowd teach their limbs. Between songs, they slipped to the edge where a window sweated. "Housing," Tessa said, smiling as if the word were a flirtation. "I'll clear the guest room tonight. Fresh sheets and a drawer." "I'll bring a suitcase and the black jacket Saskia likes," Lila said. "Darkroom gear goes to storage. I'll rent at the co-op 5 blocks from you." Less laner, more neighbor. Groceries, Tessa added a list that feeds Tuesdays and forgives Thursdays. "Sunday check-ins," Lila said. "We start tomorrow." They rejoined the wave for a fast song, then a slow one that threaded the room through a single tempo. Without ceremony, Lila's hand found the respectful place at Tessa's shoulder blade. Tessa's hand found Lila's. They moved not like people performing reunion, but like people filing an intent to inhabit. At the end of the song, Saskia texted, "Wednesday, still good. Proud of your spine." Lila showed Tessa, who grinned. Naomi sent Tessa a selfie with the physical model and the caption, "I got this." Go be a person. Tessa felt her chest rearrange around the usefulness of delegating without guilt. Later, cake, lemon with curd, frosting with the exact temper of restraint. Kara fed Rafa sensibly. Lila closed her eyes on the first bite and made a sound so sincere it made Tessa laugh. "Hero gets first slice," Tessa said, toasting Kara's morning text. Cleanup impulses kicked in. Tessa organized a small fleet for breakdown. Lila coordinated a photo booth last call montage for the couple to wake up to. It felt domestic in the public way. Work that stitches very different people into the same quilt. Outside, the rain softened to a steady hymn. Guests stacked umbrellas, called cars, traded last hugs. The band played a closer that knew when to be done. Kara and Rafa vanished under a canopy of napkins and reappeared flushed and triumphant. On the portico, Lila slipped her camera strap over her shoulder and turned to Tessa with a look that was not cinematic. "Only true key," she said softly, as if requesting an element. "I emailed for the extra FOB," Tessa answered. "Temporary code tonight, physical tomorrow." "I like when your sentences solve things," Lila said. "Can we walk home under one umbrella and then take very unsexy ibuprofen?" "We can," Tessa said. "And we will." They told Kara and Rafa good night with the privacy of friends who would still be here in the morning. Miles saluted with a take-home slice. Zia pressed a scribbled set list into Lila's hand and whispered, "Track 5 for rainy arguments. Track 9 for making up." At the door, Lila hesitated. "One last logistics item," she said, smiling as if embarrassed by hope. "My mother called tomorrow. I want her to hear from me before the internet performs detective work." "We'll call together," Tessa said. "Speakerphone, then tea." They stepped into the drizzle. The courtyard's brick shone like a new vocabulary word. Their shared umbrella made a small roof. Beneath it, the air smelled like cedar and lemon and relief. "They didn't hurry." A laugh from inside leapt out and faded. At the curb, Tessa looked back at the inn. Through a window, a staffer boxed the top tier of cake. Another untangled a cable. Flowers rested their tired faces. Beginnings rarely explode. They accrue. You notice when you can breathe and be brave in the same minute. She looked at Lila and found that minute. They exhaled together without dramatics, smiling. "Ready to go home?" Tessa asked. "Yes," Lila said, and meant the long version. They walked toward the car, umbrella tilting to cover both shoulders, their steps falling into a pattern that felt remembered and new. Beyond the dunes, waves rehearsed their old argument with the shore. The road ahead reflected the inn's lights in intermittent gold, like wayfinding. They followed it, calm, alert, carrying the weather with them, but not inside them, toward a front door that for the first time in a very long while, they both intended to unlock. Rain tongued the windows like a metronome, a rhythm the apartment had learned. Sunday morning, real cups, the check-in list folded between them. Tessa curled one foot under her on the bench by the kitchen window. Layla, hair still damp from a run, set 2 slices of lemon cake on plates and grinned. "Agenda?" Tessa asked, teasing the word even as she loved it. Lila read pen tapping lightly. "Household groceries reset. Laundry done. Therapy this week on Tuesday. Yours Wednesday. Work, Naomi. Ace the Tourette. You owe her champagne. Hamburg, opening a success. Saskia Bossy, and correct us." She looked up, still choosing out loud. Tessa nodded. The guest room had become a studio with a folding backdrop and a drawer labeled cables. In the hall closet, Tessa's hard hat hung beside Lila's black jacket. It made them both laugh when they reached for the wrong one. The rain thickened to a soft curtain and then eased. Nails slipped through the slot. Among catalogs and a street fair flyer sat a heavy envelope with Lila's name in unfamiliar hand. She slid it open with a butter knife and read twice. "Residency," she said, voice level but brighter. "Alder River Kuroda Fellowship, 6 weeks in late spring. Darkroom privileges and a stipend. They want the weather series as a starting point." Tessa took the letter, scanned the dates, the expectations. Something inside her did not brace. It lined up. 6 weeks, she said. "Close enough to come back on weekends if the trains cooperate." "I can decline." Lila started automatically, then caught herself, because they'd been undoing that reflex. "Or accept and make a plan." "Well, what do you want?" Tessa asked. "I want to go," Lila said. "And I want to come home while it's happening, not once it's over." Tessa's smile eased into place, her shoulders dropping into the kind of support that came with logistics. "Then we build around it. I'll move my spring sit walk to Mondays so our weekends stay whole." I'll draft reports 2 Fridays out of 4. You keep Tuesday teletherapy and the Sunday check-in, even when you're there. We put it all on a wall calendar we actually look at. Leila reached for her hand. Accuracy is kindness, she said, grinning now at the phrase she'd grown to love. And choice is practice, Kessa replied. She crossed to the bookcase and lifted a small wooden box where they kept small evidence that life was being lived. On top was the postcard with its crooked yellow sticker. Under it, something newer, a card they'd written together in their first week, stamped and addressed to themselves, then never mailed. She laid them side by side. The message that never arrived, and the one that didn't have to go anywhere. Proof of concept, Lila murmured. Prototype approved, Tessa said. The old private joke still landed. Outside, a car hissed along the wet street, the sound of pavement exhaling after a rinse. Tessa refilled their coffee. Lila speared a forkful of cake, said sorry with her mouth already full and kept eating. The apartment smelled of citrus and cedar. And of work still in motion? Ready? Tessa asked. For late spring, Lila said. For Tuesday. For us. They leaned across the table and kissed, not as an ending, but as a status update. Present, ordinary, precise, with rain worn down to mist. The city felt newly handleable. The calendar on the wall waited for ink, and both of them reached toward the pen.